So please welcome up onto the stage, we have Edwin van der Sar, formerly, of course, of Manchester United. So from Man U to marketing mogul at Ajax, the current CEO there. We have the former AC Milan Chief Commercial Officer, Jaap Kalma. And Paul Barber, the Chief Executive of Brighton and Hove Albion. So I'm going to be talking to the guys. I'm not going to give you a big biog about them all, because I'm sure you've read that for yourself either on the app or in the information, but lots will become apparent. Obviously, I'll let them talk about the work that they do now. So, right, I'm going to start with Paul, because of course, Brighton, back in the Premier League, or in the Premier League actually, enjoying having you here as well. Thank you for the entertainment so far. How are you finding it? Different challenges as well with regards to your role.
Tough is the answer. Yeah, we've 3 games in. You know, it's a big adjustment. 34 years it's been since Brighton played in the top level of English football. So we're having to change a lot of things, but we've got great infrastructure, a great stadium, fantastic training facilities, and with a manager that's built a good squad. So we're certainly going to try our very best to stay where it's taken us so long to get.
Does it make your job easier having an owner who's actually a fan of the club? It's a very rare thing these days, isn't it?
It is. We're very lucky, very fortunate to have someone who's supported the club since he was a very small boy. His family have been involved in the club for half a century. We're also very fortunate that he's wealthy and has been able to invest in the club, now coming up to £250 million, which is a substantial investment. But we're also fortunate in the Premier League that we can generate huge revenues from television, which obviously gives us a chance to build our squad and strengthen where we need to.
Do you think you've already started to notice how different that has changed by being in the Premier League?
Oh, the profile of the club has risen beyond even our wildest imagination, and you know, we've had a huge opening game against Manchester City, which was broadcast live across the United States and across most of the rest of the world. We've also played Leicester City, who were champions 2 years ago, so those 2 games have significantly helped our profile. But the stadium is sold out every week, the media attendance is huge, and obviously social media has played a huge part in helping us gain fans literally in every corner of the world.
Yeah, we're discussing that a lot more in the other markets that you're all pretty much tapping into at the moment and looking to do. So, Edwin, as we know, most associated with, I guess, Manchester United in these parts. You did a master's degree in sports and brand marketing at the Johan Cruyff Institute. What was that like, and how is the transition now from going from playing football to playing with facts and figures?
No, of course, I didn't want to do the traditional way, to being a coach or a goalkeeping coach or scout, whatever. So I did a master's in sport management, so going back to school, but funny thing is it's a combined course with sports people and business people who have an interest in sports. So in that way you could learn from each other. And that way it triggered my interest, and that way it's been 5 years that I'm being a director at Ajax at the moment. And since November became the CEO, and of course a complete different challenge, but it's in one way it's still very much comparable, because as a goalkeeper I want to manage my team, my defense, and in that way it's similar with my directors, with my manager. You still have to make sure you send them in the right direction, and in that way, at a certain point, you need to make a call left or right, and then the same if you come out for a cross or you go out of the 18-yard box, something in that way to make a decision.
Mm. When you first started in the role, was there something specific that you were very keen to work on with Ajax? Was there a particular project that you had in your mind that you knew you wanted to get your teeth stuck into?
No, I spoke with Johan Cruyff just after I retired, and he said that we at Ajax we want to do things differently. We want to make sure that there are football people in the top also, so also in the director's box or in the director's area. And that way bring football also into the office, and not only making decisions in a business way or business decision, but mainly on footballing reasons. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And a lot of ex-players are giving a lot of time and effort back at Ajax. Dennis Bergkamp is involved, Mark Overmars, beforehand with Frank de Boer and Wim Jong. So there's a lot of ex-players putting their knowledge gained at Ajax or abroad into the club.
Actually, does that help with the brand as well, still having these big names associated with the club? Clever from both sides.
Yeah, of course. With United, you've been what Paul said. You go everywhere in the world. I went 3 weeks to America, 3 weeks to Asia, in that way, you see a lot of things, you hear a lot of things. Well, I was coming to the end of my career, so I was not only interested in PlayStation or watching videos. So I listened very carefully to David Gill or the other the account manager who were there. In that way, also our focus also mainly on Asia. And from the 12 sponsors we have at Ajax, we have 4 of them are Asian or Chinese. So in that way, we have around 18% of our commercial revenue coming from an area but not Holland. And therefore, I know we are a big name in European football, but maybe a little bit of the past. We had success in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, winning the Champions League and playing the likes of Milan and Juventus. Last year we had a reoccurrence. We played the final European Cup. Unfortunately, against my old team, we lost out. But that's the thing that we have to make sure the name, the brand becomes bigger again, and all things help in that matter.
Yeah, I want to stay with this. I'll come to you in a moment, Jaap, I promise. I'm not ignoring you. But
thanks for coming, by the way.
yeah, with the Chinese market, obviously you were chatting about tapping into Asia. Did you learn an awful lot from particularly your pre-season tours and look at what Manchester United were doing and potentially implement some of what they do and take that into Ajax?
Yeah, okay, you'll be stupid, but not something what works and try to put that on your own club or organization. And in that matter that we did it, but also you have to be lucky that that brand wanted to come to Europe, for example. Amsterdam is also a capital, or Amsterdam does also a lot to attract foreign business. And that way it's a lot of time with the local government. It's a one-on-one, and that then you make your commitment and most of the time we succeeded to bring that partner in.
Okay, right, yeah. You've seen your career working with very stylish brands. We have the very fashionable AC Milan. You've worked for Unilever and Ferrari as well before taking on your role with AC Milan. Chief Commercial Officer for the club there, with an overseas variety of sectors, including you look after marketing, sales, brand management, sponsorship for the club worldwide. But how does actually working in all those roles and looking after all those elements with a football club compared to working, I guess, with Ferrari and bringing some of the logic from Ferrari to football?
Well, they're very similar in the sense that they're, for lack of a better word, they're love brands. They're brands that don't need advertising. They're brands that attract people. And the way that you leverage it through sponsorship or licensing or whatever, that is very similar. The difference is that Ferrari makes products. So Ferrari in the end is a combination of a sports team, a lot of engineers on the sports team, but still a sports team, and a fully fledged car manufacturer. So you have a concrete product. You have a product with pretty clear aspects and a very clear positioning. And that makes your brand also more concrete. So if you say, what is Ferrari about? You can very clearly say, it's about red cars. You get an image. Whereas for a sports team, that is relatively more, from a branding point of view, that's relatively more complicated.
Okay. And how complicated is it when you're trying to do your job and there's this takeover happening by the Chinese consortium? That's obviously happened now. When you have a vision, Berlusconi has a vision, but then the Chinese owners have a very different vision. Or do they?
Well, of course, you don't have the product side, as I just said. So the people, in the end, it's a people business. It's very much about the characters that are involved, the players first and foremost, the manager, but also the owner, of course. And if you have an owner such as Mr. Berlusconi, that's a very, very strong, from a branding point of view, from an identification point of view, that's a very strong presence, especially if he's there for 30 years, especially if he's very active in the club. So that is a great impact if he, after 31 years, sells the club. And then you go from an Italian owner to a Chinese owner. So, yeah, that is mixing things up a little bit. What the new owner and the new management team, what we've been trying to do, what they're trying to do, is of course to keep the connections, to create elements of continuity, because in the end, you buy a brand. The value is very much in the identity and the relationships with the fans.
How do you think you make sure that you stand apart from some of the other Italian clubs that potentially, fans could be tapping into? You're a young Chinese boy. You want to follow the Italian league. You like the look of Juventus. You like the look of Inter Milan. Why AC Milan? And what would you work on to make sure that in China you stand above the rest?
Well, we have the advantage of all of these successes in this last 30 years. So internationally, when people think about an Italian club, the first club that comes to mind is AC Milan. So in that sense, you're already associated with Italy. Then having Milan in the name, Inter has it as well, but it's not as clear. You immediately benefit from all the secondary associations of Milan, Milano. The city, fashion, design, it brings a lot of these aspects. So, actually, when we were talking before, you said something that was very nice. You said, if I think about the most stylish club in the world, I immediately think about AC Milan. And I think that is in part because what we've done what has been done over the history, but that's in part simply because you have Milan in the name. And that is something that's part of your identity that you need to build on.
Can it be a hindrance, though, because you then think, well, I'm only going to have to associate myself with stylish brands?
Well,
whatever that means.
We don't get Taliban about it. I mean, in the end, it oftentimes works the other way around. Brands that are interested in style, that want to reinforce that value, look for like-minded clubs. So oftentimes you find each other that way. I mean, the Audi partnership was a very clear example of that. Well, one of the ways that it reflects is that for us, the style partner, the partner, we call it style partner, fashion partner, whatever you want to call it, the partner that provides the suit of the players when they're off the field, the social uniform, if you will, is for us a key strategic partnership. And for us, that was, for 11 years, that was Dolce & Gabbana. So, we fully understood that after 11 years, a fashion brand every so often needs to change as well. It's about fashion in the end, so they decided to get out of football. But for us, that was a major, last year, was a major issue, because that's a key partnership for us. That is something that we leverage a lot, that we activate a lot, that we want to show. So in the end, after a lot of talks, we ended up in an entirely different but gutsy partnership with Diesel, with a very prolific founder, Mr. Renzo Rosso, who is very creative, and we're going in a much more modern, stylish direction there.
Okay.
What you said about you have to need, where do you form yourself, so stylish and everything, and I think that's, for example, with Ajax, you have one thing that stands out is academy, it's youth development. So, and I think you have to caress whatever your strong points, try to get gains on those kind of things. If you, we don't have the big players, we don't have Ronaldo or but for example, Ibrahimovic, he played at Ajax, Suarez, he played at Ajax. So we are whatever constant with talent, finding talent, creating talent, developing talent, and then they go to bigger markets, and they go to Italy, they go to England, they go to Spain. So in that way, we have to stand out. Where we put scouting, talent, development, and that kind of thing. Then focus on those points.
Yeah. How do you make sure that Brighton stand out then?
Well, I mean, we're reinventing ourselves, and the new stadium and the new training ground are giving us an opportunity to create a new culture within the club, which has been very, very prevalent over the last few years as we've moved to the Premier League. But we're competing with some of the biggest names in football now in the Premier League, these guys in Europe. It's a very, very difficult task for us to stand up and be noticed. We need to dominate Sussex before we dominate the rest of England, let alone Europe. And that's something which is part of our objective now. And part of that will be very significant if we can stay in the Premier League, because then it gives us an opportunity to move forward from there. But the stadium's sold out every week. The sponsors we've got, Nike and American Express, are global brands. They're helping us to develop that. Yeah, it's a big challenge when you're up against names like Milan and Ajax and all of the names we have in the Premier League.
Will you be connecting, do you think, with markets far and wide, or are you just particularly focusing on this now?
We've got to walk before we run, and it's very important that the club can stabilise its walking and then move from there. So our priority really is about this market, this country, but of course we're not naive enough to think the Premier League doesn't give us an opportunity to expand internationally, and we'll take every opportunity that comes our way for sure.
Yeah, and you're actually very good with social media and the way that Brighton works with that. I mean, how has that changed everything for you?
Well, Brighton as a city is a very sort of arty, media-focused, technology-savvy city. So our social media and our use of technology is important, not just to the club, but also to the city as a whole and the people within it. And we don't have the marketing budgets of a Manchester United or a Milan or any of the bigger clubs, so we have to be clever with our marketing. We have to use social media as a means of getting our brand out there. But of course, in this day and age, social media is a positive and a negative. You know, it's a difficulty when it's managed with the players and what the players say and when they say it and how they say it and what they can choose to contribute to. But it's also a massive marketing positive for the club, so we have to keep managing those challenges of positive and negative the whole time. But overall, it's here to stay, so we have to embrace it and we have to use it.
Yeah. Would you say that social media has changed the way that maybe you think about how to promote a brand?
Yeah, of course, incredibly. I mean, in the end, your brand is out there in a great many ways. Whereas you don't even need to go that far back, and your brand was out there more or less in the Sunday paper. And there was in Italy, as in Holland, there was one match on national television on the 2 or 3 channels that were there. Right now, your brand is out there all the time, anywhere, and not just through your own activities, but also through all of your fans' activities, and that you influence, that you do not influence, that you react to, it's completely different. But your presence has multiplied internationally also in an incredible way.
Do you think Ajax has a strong media presence, a strong brand through media?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have 24 people working on our media department. So for a club the size of Ajax, the big name, but in a small country or a mid-sized country, what Paul said about TV rights and everything, we are getting yearly 8.5 million from our TV rights. So somehow we have to work very hard on the commercial side to get revenue inside. We also have a sold-out stadium, 52,000. So that's fantastic. But so where does the rest come? You want to grow also. And the growth probably will be in Europe, playing Champions League, Europa League, those kind of things. But on the media side, we can do a lot. We invest a lot. I think that's really the case. A website nowadays, it sounds to be old, out of fashion. So you need to have quicker things to do. Okay, you have the Snapchat and that kind of things. But we also grow, tapping big in the esports, the FIFA esports. Yeah. I think we signed a year and a half ago the first FIFA player in Holland. So we have the second and looking for the third one, and also expanding it globally. So in that way you can connect much quicker, easier to younger fans who are not looking at websites, not on Facebook anymore, but to esports. And also the players, they love to help out in that matter, and that's also good for their profile. And in that way, we are creating new sort of fans who are connecting in a different way than, I'm 46, my kids are 19 and 17. But what I think is completely different than us mid-size, 40-something guys.
Actually, do you then take into consideration maybe what the players want? You're a former player yourself, but this is a different generation, as you mentioned. What they would be interested in, what they would want to engage in, to make sure that those are the brands you're associating with, and you make sure that they do their media commitments, which can be very hard, as we all know.
Can be hard, but to be fair, you can't really be a superstar at Ajax. I think when you're at Madrid or Barcelona, then you have something to say. But I think for us, you still have to develop. And also, if you wanna develop yourself into a great player, and if you come into a bigger club, you also have bigger commitments. So you can start also with the commitments. You can start at the club also. And for us, it's key to have. We have just under 30 million on commercial revenue, and that's over a third of our budget. So I don't think a lot of clubs in the UK have that. Maybe the 2 or 3 really big ones. But I was hearing also one of the gentlemen beforehand talking about the influx of money and state-owned money or revenue-driven through Europa League or TV rights. So for us, that's to really focus on to make sure that on the commercial side we get the money inside to pay our players, to pay for our academy. Our academy is around 11 million euros to run every year, and that's why we have to get the benefit from on the pitch, developing and putting those players into the team.
Edwin makes an interesting point, Hayley, about FIFA, because this is the first year that we're featured in the game. So the marketing value for us of being in FIFA this year, our stadium has been rendered by the game, the players have all been filmed with their particular moves and goal celebrations. The marketing value for us alone from that game going out across the world, the most popular game, the most popular league played in the game, and that for us is worth many millions of pounds in marketing value. So in terms of building the brand, another benefit of getting to the Premier League is just being in the FIFA game. And you walk into a cafe or a Starbucks in Brighton and kids high five you, and it's because you're in the game. It's not because you're cool, it's because you're in the game. And that's again one of those sort of intangible benefits that you don't even think about until you're suddenly playing in the biggest league in the world.
Just going a little bit off topic, so much to cover. Do you actually look, Paul, to other clubs to see what they're doing?
Oh, all the time.
To replicate it, or do you look to other businesses as well?
All the time. We look at other clubs. We look at bigger clubs. We look at smaller clubs because, we find very often the bigger clubs, as Edwin said, have got the resources to do things differently and better. The smaller clubs haven't got the resources, so they have to find other ways of doing things differently and better. So we look both ways. We look to Formula One. We've been to visit McLaren to see how their obsession with detail and their obsession with the quality of their brand and the organisations they associate with, we can learn from that. We look to Wimbledon tennis and look at the way they organise their events and the precision that goes into that. So I think you've always got to be open-minded to learning from other sports and other organisations and other businesses and other people. I think these kind of events are perfect for that, because there might be just one thing you hear today that you can take back and put into practice in your own organisation. Yeah,
absolutely. I just want to ask you actually about the role that you had at the FA as Director of Marketing and Communication. You had the task of actually taking on, into consideration the FA's prime assets. There was the FA Cup, the England team, title sponsors. You have to be very, very careful with England. England is a brand in itself. The FA is a brand. But how much does the success of the national team actually matter when you're selling the FA's properties?
Oh, very much so. If the England team is doing well, then usually the FA is doing well. And back in those days, we wanted to take away the title sponsorship for the England team and the FA Cup, because the research told us that fans felt that they owned those things. The England team was the national team, the nation's team. They didn't want to have a commercial brand put all over the national team. Likewise, the FA Cup, it was seen as a very special trophy and not one that they wanted to be named in any way. So we created a Champions League style sponsorship program where 4 or 5 brands had equal access to those 2 key properties, the England team and the FA Cup. But in return, they also had to connect with the grassroots level of the game and put something back into the lowest levels. And that program, existed for some years and worked very well. And McDonald's, who were one of our original partners in that, I think 15 years later, are still committing huge amounts of money to grassroots football. So, you have to be careful when you're working with national teams and properties like the FA Cup, because they are very special to people. Football fans see them as their own. They don't particularly want major brands owning them in any way. So I know the FA have gone back these days to title sponsors, because again the market tends to change, and sponsors' demands and the ability to generate revenue from sponsors has to go with what the sponsors are looking for as much as what the organisation itself needs. So you do have to evolve and change with the times.
Talking about evolving and changing with the times, how have you seen things change since your playing days until your role now? But
I think that's happening everywhere. When I started in say 1990, yeah, it was all quite similar. I was 19, I got drafted in from an amateur club. I was straight away, I was third goalkeeper on 15,000 guilders. That's about whatever, 5,000 pounds a year. And of course, when we won the Champions League in '95, I was on 300,000 guilders. That's 140,000 pounds a year. So of course, after that, I think Louis van Gaal said it really, the Champions League really commercial monster. So like, and it's, yeah, everybody got more hunger, more desire, and at a certain point, top clubs they said, yeah, listen, not only the number one club should be in the Champions League, other number 2 and number 3 must have a chance, or we need more games. And nowadays, yeah, you see for a coming season or for 18-19 that the four clubs in England, Germany, Italy, and Spain, they're going to have automatic place in the Champions League. So that makes it much more difficult for whatever smaller clubs or big clubs from mid-sized countries to gain financial revenue. And in that way, I think for the football world, I think the level has gone up. You see how much the boys train. When we started, okay, you did your technical exercises and you did whatever 25 squats in the gym, and that was about it. And nowadays you have to be Ironman to really keep on competing on such a high level, and the demand, the pace of the game. I think that evolved also over those years. And that way, as a club, you need to also make sure you stay ahead of those developments and making sure that every little gain you can get from different company, different club, or talk like this, or hearing something at a conference to make sure that it helps your club forward.
Okay. I want to chat about one of the brands that AC Milan have on board now, and how this came about, and whether it was a good move or not such a good move. People questioned it at first with the sponsorship of and the partnership with Hello Kitty.
Oh.
Which doesn't seem very AC Milan, or is it?
Stylish.
It's very stylish. No, it actually was something. At the time, we had a master license with Adidas, so it came through them, and at a certain moment, this contract passed my desk to sign, and I was like, oh, what is this? And it was relatively small, and you know how these things go. I was somewhat hesitant because I had some experience in Ferrari with Pixar, with the Cars movie, and operationally that didn't really work that well in terms of approvals and royalties and so forth. So in the end, I said, well, it's cute. Let's do it. It's no biggie. And it turned, it's one of those strange things that you don't foresee. It really got a lot of attention, and it kind of turned viral. And I think it basically is a small, likable thing for a very specific target that you normally don't look at as a club.
Yeah.
Young girls. I have a young daughter, so it's very cute.
So cleverly tapping into females and young kids. Actually, I was a bit skeptical at first, but yeah, okay. It's worked, hasn't it?
It's as long as they enjoy it, it's not no mean intentions.
What about being careful with the brands that you are associated with, Paul? Because presumably, as a smaller club, any money that comes in is important, but more important to make sure that they are the right brands to be associated with.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, back in not that long ago, less than 20 years ago, when Brighton was struggling, didn't have any money. The only company that was prepared to invest in the club at that time was a record label called Skint. And so the word Skint was on the front of the club shirts when it had no money. I think Brighton at that time ended up playing a club whose sponsor was Loaded, the boys' magazine. Oh. So it was Skint v Loaded. And of course, the club at that time had to make a lot of those sort of associations to generate publicity and awareness. These days, shows you how far we've come. We had Skint, now we've got American Express. You couldn't really get such a big contrast. But I think brands do look at football clubs very carefully. They look at the sort of club values, they look at the city, they look at what that club's trying to achieve, how it goes about conducting its business. And I think brands and clubs have to be careful about those associations. It's very easy to take the money, but get the wrong association. And then there's all kinds of problems that can come from that. Other brands don't see it that way. They just see it as an opportunity to advertise themselves globally through the Premier League, in which case the club might just be happy to take the money. But for me, we try and find the right brands that fit our club, what we're trying to achieve, and the culture of the club.
I think that's similar for us. I think Champions League style. I think at a certain point we still had 20% over time for the LED boarding. We're still up for whatever. You pay 15,000, you get 10 seconds of advertisement time. You saw, local branded commercial partners and said, no, I don't want it. I make sure we only have our sponsors on the boards. And because you have strong sponsors, for example, we have Mercedes, and we've been talking with CST, was one of the biggest tire companies in Asia, in China. Yeah, they love to have their image next to the star from Mercedes. So in that way, that can enhance each other, strong brands. So we have Adidas, Hublot. So those are whatever world famous brands. And then they at a certain point need to encourage and help the brands to connect with each other. And that way we're at the moment we're a couple of years ago, one of my first jobs was making sure we got a new main sponsor. Aegon, an insurance company, was finishing. They were paying around 12 million a year for the shirt and the whole club. And that we tried it, and we felt in the market we're not getting that same value from one sponsor. So we tried it. We carefully looked, and that's what I learned at United. They have Chevrolet only on the shirt, and the rest is Aeon branded.
So a separate training kit.
Separate training kit and everything. So we decided to we have one company who looks really only for exposure, and we have one company who wants social responsibility. But how can you connect it with each other? Social responsibility with children, with women. So they are, like I said, the sponsor of the Youth Academy. And Ziggo is the main sponsor for the first team and the reserve team who play in the second division. So in that way, two companies, two names on different properties is earning us much more than only one sponsor. So in that way, you have to be inventive to try to create value on different properties for our club.
I definitely think good sponsors breed good sponsors, and I think our association with American Express encouraged Nike to get involved with us. BMW came on after that, and this week we'll be announcing our first sleeve sponsorship, which is, again, there's relatively few clubs in the Premier League that have managed to get that deal done. We've been able to, I think, because of the quality of the other brands that we're working with. So I think Edwin's right. Once you've got a good collection of quality brands, they can then work with each other. American Express customers are likely to buy BMW cars. BMW car drivers are likely to have an American Express card. So these things do tend to work together and can help to generate quite large revenues for the clubs.
Yeah, actually you just mentioned the sleeve sponsor there. I want to ask Edwin about Tinder and Manchester United. What do you make of that?
I don't know. You're in the market still, or?
This dating app that people are loving right now?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't know. I spoke to Ed Woodward. I was in Geneva yesterday and everything, and of course they are, I think the number one club where you look at process, how they achieve things, how they analyze a market, how they find their sponsors, and we've learned a great deal. We've been a couple of times to London to the commercial offices, but I think that's something for Ed Woodward and the club to decide. But I think they have strong partners, and the way they benefit from the commercial revenues. You see the players they can attract. So I think they're back on track, and what they do with the shirt they have to know for ourselves. But of course at the moment we have only one sponsor, but you never know what in the future. If you really want to grow your commercial revenues, then you probably have to look, and if the Premier League starts, then probably other clubs are following also. Yeah. But to have like a Belgium or sometimes like a Czech Republic style, something that a lot of also on the shirts and on socks and on the back, and that's
like a Formula One car.
Yeah, if you have 7 or 8 commercial names on your shirt and your socks, then that's not the case, I think. But if you keep it whatever front, back, and whatever the side, then it should be fine.
AC Milan operate like that as well, don't they?
Well, we only have Emirates there.
Yeah.
So, but I want to latch on to the point before. I think in terms of maximizing your sponsorship revenue, it's crucial to get that mix of very prestigious big brands, more fly-by-night type of opportunities, because the money is important as well, and a mix of and getting some longevity in that, because in the end, what a lot of brands look at, who are the other partners? They're very professional. They've been there renewing for a great many times. It must work. It's a very simple logic, but it definitely has worked very well for AC Milan.
Okay. Right, with 10 minutes left, I'll open up to questions from the floor if anyone has any. Must be one.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. See you all later. You can head for an early lunch.
There's one there.
Yay. Yep, go ahead.
Someone has to be the brave
Got a
first.
microphone. Microphone's heading your way.
Like the ice.
Right. One big question, if you're trying to project yourselves in, say, 5 years' time, what would you think would be would you be still a football club? Would you be an entertainment company? So what would each of you like to be in 5 years?
For myself, talking for myself, Ajax is a football club. Of course, other things are around it, but our core philosophy is football. It's not about selling shirts in Asia. It's not about conquering the market in South Africa. Although we have an Ajax Cape Town, we have a 51% part in the football club there. But I think for us, it's philosophy. It's about developing players. It's about creating new stars. Those stars probably not blossom at Ajax, but they're going to blossom at other clubs. But that's okay, and I think that's our position in football. And of course, the media and the commercial side, of course, you all need it. But we are a football club.
Yeah. I think in the end, your mission as a football club is to win, and this style and the way that you do that, and that's your implicit contract also with your fans. Your fans give you support, loyalty, they identify with you, and your end of the bargain is that you do your utmost to make the club win. You're not in there for the money. So having said that, I think, of course, football is the core, but it becomes ever more a spectacle. Everything around it becomes ever more entertaining, ever more engaging. There's nothing you can do about it. That's just, if you look also at the obligations that a player had when you were playing, the obligations and the fan activities, the fan interaction, the engagement that a player has nowadays, that's increased tremendously, I would expect.
Yeah, okay, but I think also, let's say, the salaries have tenfolded. So in that way, in my time, you got paid to do your job on the pitch. Now you get paid also to promote products and help or pay for the rest of the rent of the stadium and the youth academy. But I think of course it's true. You got much more around it nowadays. But people want to know much more already. You can flick through 1,000 TV channels, or you can flick through. I was watching somebody else, and somebody was talking here. And in the meantime, somebody was on his phone and seeing all the social media stuff and watching a little movie. So you do much more things now at once. You're not only watching television. You do something else also. So in that way, it becomes more like a product than a football club. That's true.
It enriches, I guess.
For us, definitely a football club, number one. Two, a sports and entertainment venue, because we've invested a lot in our stadium. And number three, because the city, the size that it is, we're a very important and intrinsic part of the community. And therefore our charity works within the community on a range of health, education, social awareness issues and projects which are very important to the city. So those three things in 5 years will continue to be very important for us.
Yeah, go ahead. Microphone's on its way.
Hi, thank you. Jeffrey Blossett with the Washington Redskins of the National Football League across the pond. I love the conversation you had with regards to branding and sponsorships. My question was in regards to when you formulate agreements with these brands for shirt sponsors or whatever, signage and your stadiums and whatever the case may be. What do you put any emphasis on, say, the return that brand gives you for them to enhance your club? So you're already doing so much to promote, say, Emirates and AC Milan. Do you at all in the agreements emphasize what can Emirates do to benefit AC Milan, like on airlines or in their marketing or in things like that? How do you leverage each other, basically?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's absolutely yes is the answer. You look in the entire mix of rights and benefits, which has over the last 5 or 10 years has grown tremendously more complex and diverse and rich. you try to find a mix that of course enhances your brand value and enhances is entertaining for your fans and in that sense adds value to you. So that's part of the negotiation in that sense. I mean, in the end, the golden rule, he who has the money, he who has the gold rules, the sponsor decides, but that's part of the negotiation, the back and forth. Yeah.
Certainly in our case, I mean, 6 years ago when American Express became one of our partners, their opening position in the negotiation was, well, we're going to make you famous, what are you going to pay us? Yeah, so that's where they started from, and from that point of view, we had to work backwards from there to get to a positive position. We've done that, and obviously their investment in us has proved to be a good one, because at that time we were a low-level club, and now we're in the Premier League. So I think, as Jaap says, it's very important to get that balance right, and it's actually valuable to create some value in kind through the deal. And if you've got brands as big as Amex and BMW, and in our case Heineken, and brands of that kind of Nike, willing to invest in you with their promotional work, again, with a small club, with a small marketing budget, that's worth a lot of money to us.
Yeah, for us we have we have Ziggo, there's a big cable company in Holland, part of Liberty Global, what's more famous in America. But that way they also created their own sports channel. They have the Formula 1 rights, and also in that way they can activate Ajax even more. So in that way it's a win-win situation for both of us. They have a little bit more access to players, a little bit more access they can with the manager. So in that way we have whatever TV program you can monetize on. So in that way it's a win-win situation for both of us, and of course selling whatever friendly matches only to see on their channel. So in that way they can attract whatever the 3.5-4 million fans we have in Holland after the 16. They can attract to their television channel.
I think we all know the benefits of Dolce & Gabbana. That would be a nice uniform to have, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Well, also diesel is very nice, more comfortable.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, at the back. In the red tie, thanks.
Hi. So obviously, as you probably know, in recent years, there's been a lot of talk of like the big European clubs breaking away and making like a European Super League as such. And obviously, for a club like Ajax that back in the day was a massive club, and it's still a big club, but can't quite compete financially with a lot of the Premier League clubs and like Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, etc., etc. Is that if there was potentially a conversation about a European Super League, is that something that you would back, because it could potentially allow the brand of Ajax to grow further, because they'd be in essentially a more popular and a league with all the other big European clubs?
Yeah, of course, you're always attracted. Say if that IC championship that happens in America and in Asia before the season, we definitely have, for example, to take part in that. But in Holland it's difficult because we're lower on the ranking. So if you not win the league, and the league you only win maybe on the 24th of May, then it's too short to take part in those kind of championships. Or even if you're second or third, you have to play qualification matches to enter Champions League or Europa League. Even this year we didn't even qualify for that. So for us that's a setback on the European front. But if there are, let's say, the 18-21 cycle is known, 21-24 cycle is known, what happens in 24, you don't know. So that's why for Ajax it's great importance to stay in touching distance with the big clubs. And of course we are not the 600-700 million for the United, the Madrids and the Chelsea. That's impossible. Of course we're competing. I told the polls earning over 100 million TV rights. We get 8.5 million. So of course there's a salary difference. So in that way we cannot pay our players the money that can in France or England or Germany. But with our philosophy, with our determination, with the academy, with the philosophy, with players buying into that possibility at 18, 19 years old, playing 40, 50 matches. That doesn't happen with a lot of clubs. So in that way we have to just be clever and try to make sure this time, when whatever the next cycle comes or new ideas are coming, that we're part of that.
Can I just say, we've just got to the Premier League. We don't want them breaking away just yet, okay? Just keep those big clubs where they are.
Okay, time for one more. The gentleman back in the corner. Thanks.
Hi there. So we've been talking about the club's brand, but what impact is there of the player's brand on negotiations and either bringing them in or keeping them at the clubs?
Yeah, what Paul said, I think the money you have, you can't exceed it. I think you have to work with the money that you have, but also don't do stupid things, because you never know what happens in the future. If you're going to be relegated from the Premier League, you're not playing European football for 2 years, or Milan also has had their issues with no income from Europe. They have a different owner now. They made some extra investments, so in that way, you always have to look what's coming in. Of course, you make a 5-year plan, and you want to be whatever somewhere in 2023. But the short term is important. Also, staying in the Premier League, winning the league, getting back into European places. So those are key issues where you're dealing with at the moment. Next to the plan you have in about 5 or 6 years' time, and in that way you get your finances scheduled on that.
Would that work for Brighton, maybe taking on a player who is a big brand but might not necessarily be signed just for football reasons, because you know then in turn that's going to benefit the club because your player has a profile of such, his own brand?
I think you've always got to sign a player for football reasons first and foremost, and I think over the years any club that has tried to do it for different reasons, it might come off once in a while, maybe with a Beckham, maybe, but I think primarily you've got to sign players for football reasons.
Well, I've always.
Sorry, Paul, to interrupt, but I'm really to go. My plane goes at 2:15, so I got an hour and 12 minutes to get to my plane. So
we are finished anyway.
We're
so
finished.
Let Edwin run.
Thank you very much, Hayley. Good to see you.
Yep, take care.